Hey everyone, it's T-Lore with Stow Better. With the launch of the 14th anniversary ships, one ship in particular stood out to me as something really fun to build around. I've been piecing together an idea for a maximum hull build for quite some time, and with the release of the Princeton, you could actually do damage with that hull capacity. Now, the Discovery reputation already has traits and gear that interact with hull capacity, but also have hard caps at 200,000 hull, which isn't hard to hit. Fractal Integrity Bleed, the console from the Princeton, has no restrictions on your maximum hull. I did some quick math to figure out if this console was worth building around. For simplicity, let's take 100,000 hull capacity and see how much damage this console does. Assuming we keep our hull healed up during the duration, 16% of our current hull is applied as damage to up to 10 targets within 5 kilometers of us every second for 20 seconds. That's 16,000 damage per second per target, or a cumulative total of 3.2 million damage for one click of this console. For reference, an ISE has somewhere on the order of 230 million total hit points, and a 90-second run would be a total of 35k DPS or so. Now, that's a lot of assumptions, but that number puts it in the realm of quite usable. 100k hull is very easy to hit, 10 targets is a bit harder but still doable. That begs the question, how high can you get your hull capacity? I'll save some deep digging, but the highest hull capacity ships will have to have Miracle Worker at commander level, or at least 2 command powers, or both. Miracle Worker is needed for reroute shields to hull capacity 3, the only bridge officer power that adds hull capacity, and command powers for triggering Adaptive Tactical Algorithms starship trait. Finally, you want to make sure the ship you choose has a high hull modifier, and even better if it has the Mastery Armored Hull for just a little bit more hull. The clear winner when it comes to hull capacity is the promo ship Vedgrid Hive Dreadnought at 1.7 hull modifier, as well as command seating. While it loses out on Miracle Worker seating, extra universal console, and a weapon slot, the 1.7 hull mod is a clear winner. I wasn't about to shell out for a promo ship for this, so I started looking at fleet and C-store ships. It's important to talk about adaptive tactical algorithms at this point. All sources of additional hull, except for the hull modifier, add a percentage of hull based on your hull modifier. 10% additional hull capacity on a 1.5 hull modifier ship will add 6750 hull capacity, except for adaptive tactical algorithms. This trait triggers off of command powers and actually gives 20% base hull. This effectively turns that 1.5 hull mod into a 1.8 hull mod. This immediately shortens our list of potential ships down to any with command seating. I'd even recommend at least 2 seats just to be able to have a higher uptime. If we compare the highest hull mod ship with Commander Miracle Worker plus command seating, Princeton or Assimilator with 1.45, versus one without the Miracle Worker seating, 1.7 hull mod, the extra console slot and 50% from reroute shields to hull capacity provides an extra 35,000 hull capacity. Now, I won't go into detail on every piece of gear that gets slotted. You can do your own research, but you'll quickly find that as a baseline, nothing beats the Discovery drivetrain, integrity-linked weapons, and PAX consoles from the Discovery reputation. We can squeeze out a little more hull capacity from an Iconian 2-piece weapon set, and there are a few consoles that provide more than the 12.3 hull capacity from a PAX console. The main one to note here is Micro Warp Bubble Shockwave from the Justiciar, with a whopping 20% hull capacity and an AoE that scales off hull capacity. Although nowhere near as strong as the Fractal Integrity Bleed, it's still really fun to use. There are exactly 7 starship traits, 2 personal traits, and 2 reputation traits that provide any semblance of hull capacity, one of which scales off exotic particle generators, so we choose PAX particle generators for our universal console slots. Duty officers are pretty limited as well, with K-13 duty officers providing skill bonuses and liberated Borg duty officers providing a chance for hull to team. Jevanite ablative hardpoints and competitive increased max hit points consumables are also important to bring along. There are a ton of other little nuances and bonuses that all add up to quite a list of triggers and rolls you are looking for to stack to hit that all-important maximum value. I also made sure to have the rest of my powers trying to keep uptime on my hull capacity sources, as well as keeping my shields up for reroute shields to hull containment. Now that you have an idea of what I'm up to, here's a recording of actually hitting my personal best hull record. I made sure to leave some on the table so you can try to beat this record on your own, but also someday I plan on taking another try with fully upgraded gear and all the proper traits. The first step is building all the stacks of History Will Remember, the Power of Math, and Threatening Stance. I have my friend on Team 2 with a carrier using weak pets that will trigger History Will Remember and Threatening Stance, but are also easily killable with the Power of Math. We discovered that the power of math will only build a maximum of 4 stacks at a time, so getting to 20 stacks will take at least 5 activations. Next, my teammate with Engineering Fleet, EPS Power Transfer, and a liberated Borg Duty Officer began cycling to try and trigger the plus 10% hull capacity to team. Ideally, I'd have 4 teammates with Unified Engineering, liberated Borg, and coordination protocols. Having them use biomolecular shield generator and other shield regeneration powers would also be ideal to keep shields topped up. Notice how I'm using gravity well to clump up the fighters so that I can get more stacks of the power of math at once. Once we have all 20 stacks of the power of math and 30 stacks of history will remember, we cut down on how many fighters are shooting. I still need to be in combat in order to maintain the stacks of threatening stance. I activate both consumables and we start watching for the Borg Duty Officer to activate from my teammate. Shield and aux power both contribute to some additional hull capacity. I make sure to change my power settings to maximize shields and then auxiliary, since the emergency power to shields is rank 1 and emergency power to auxiliary is rank 2 for more EPG for devious rerouting. I pull up the stats screen readout and wait for my teammate to call out that the buff is up. Once it is up, I hit powers in a specific order to maximize my hull capacity output. One special sequence is to use quantum singularity manipulation to add EPG, which adds extra hull for devious rerouting. I make sure to do this before using reroute shields to hull containment, as this will also double as our trigger for devious rerouting. You'll see here when I trigger reroute shields to hull containment, I only get 32.7 hull capacity instead of 50. Extra shield healing would have earned me a lot more hull capacity. I also chose command powers that don't require a target so I can more easily cycle them. And there it is. This is my personal best hull capacity, 643,041. With all the stacked triggers, it doesn't last long. We also would have to wait another 5 minutes or longer for some of the longer cooldown powers to come off cooldown to try again. So this is where it stays for now. This was within 4% of the total hull capacity I had on paper, 670,000. I'd love to see some builds that aim to beat my record, especially on the Princeton. The Vedcrid should be able to break 720,000 hit points, potentially even approaching 800,000 with the right team. So how does this do in a practical build? I dropped many of the lower powered sources of hull capacity or more finicky triggers, as well as went to a command-only ship. The Fleet Baran would do slightly better, but since I had the Justiciar for its console already, I used the Fleet Justiciar to make a torpedo off-tank focused around the Fractal Integrity Bleed console. An important thing to discuss is Fractal Integrity Bleed's self-damage. If you take the 8% max hull per second and multiply it out, this is a negative 480% hull regeneration for the 20-second duration of the active. If you compare this to the Discovery Reputation 2-piece, that's 120% positive hull regeneration. So, I tried to counter this with enough sources of regeneration at an economy budget level. However, there just aren't enough sources of hull regeneration to get there. Since this character had a dynamic power redistributor, I used this instead. The active not only does a lot of bonus damage, it also has 500% hull regeneration and syncs up perfectly with the Fractal Integrity Bleed active, as both are channels for 20 seconds. I also found that the outgoing damage respects resistances, so debuffs will strongly boost the outgoing damage of Fractal Integrity Bleed. On one of my runs, I was doing an average of 160k damage per tick with the console active, with a hull capacity of around 350,000 in combat. This console active shreds anything on normal or advanced content and does significant damage in groups on Elite due to their massive hit point pools. This gives any build focused on the Fractal Integrity Bleed very strong burst damage for bosses or strong attack waves. As a bonus, the Justiciar's Micro Warp Bubble Shockwave console is really fun to use. You can warp from at most 15 kilometers and ram opposing targets. Then you are in perfect position to activate the DPRM and Fractal Integrity Bleed. In some cases, you'll even be within 15 kilometers during mission briefing and can activate the console a couple seconds before the end to instantly warp into position as soon as the mission starts. If you want more details on my practical elite capable torpedo build, check out the link in the description. If you want to set your own hull capacity record, we'd love to hear about it through feedback in the comments or on our site. Can you beat my record before I do? If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and sharing this video, or subscribe to our channel. For more guides and builds, check us out at www.stobetter.com.